where the word stick turned out to be a very loaded word. Again, there's no way you would know it. But so the person's restating, so you took this stick, and the other person's jumping in there. Are you kidding? It wasn't a stick. It was this huge branch. And that turned out to be the point of the disagreement. We have that in here just so you're aware that that's liable to happen to you sometime, where things that you think are purely innocent and you would have no idea that it's going to make someone really angry. And that's fine. You correct it and you move on. But that's why we have this one in here. Let's just do number 5. I can't trust a pig like him.
What do you have?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I sneak away without? Darn. I didn't have anything. No. There actually, well, let's see. Well, let me do 4. She took the huge stick and attacked me with brutal force. You're concerned about, well, there was an incident that occurred and you're concerned about your safety. That one's actually taking it a little bit further. That's more like what Dick did. You're almost testing the waters of what they're saying. So there wasn't a complete neutralizing language. The other thing I had came from the simulation. You're upset about the event in the alley because this sentence came out of something that happened in the alley. But that's what I had. So, but I think you guys may have had some better ones than what I had. Okay, I can't trust a pig like him.
You did not think you could trust him.
Okay, that's good.
Given you a reason not to trust him.
Good. That's
His
good.
behavior elicits mistrust in you?
All those are good. You got rid of pig. And so I had, you don't feel like you can trust him, so trust is an issue for you. I think you all are getting this.
And trust is not a value judgment there. You don't have to get rid of that.
No.
I couldn't get rid of it.
No, you wouldn't have to get rid of it. And again, I want to be real careful. We're just doing this so you're aware that you may want to think about some of the loaded words people are saying. But this isn't something that in the mediation you're going to need to focus on doing every time. It's something that you may do once in a while. Okay. I'm going to skip 6 and 7, unless someone wants me to give you an answer on it. Anybody? Well, now I'll give you an answer.
Yeah.
Number 6, her lewd phone calls come constantly, incessantly, at every hour of the day and night. I just had the frequency of the calls bother you. So, and I'm sure if some of you got to it, you have some good ones too. Number 7, he has a whole army of brats over there. In this simulation, in this example, they were talking about children, so I had all the children disturb you or causes you concern.
I was trying to focus on not making an assumption. I just said people.
Well, no, which is fine, because, and my example came because I knew where it came from, and so people would have been perfect. That would have been better. See, good. The assumption quiz was working. Any questions on neutralizing language? I think you understand it. So that's the first step. So that's good. Okay. What I'd like to do now then is change to talking about effective questioning. And we've already talked about it between Andy and a little bit with me already as you were discussing the video and other topics. The biggest form of communication for a mediator in a mediation will be asking questions. What do you think? What is the reason for that? I mean, why is the mediator constantly asking questions? What does that do?
To give them room
Requires
to open up.
communication.
Okay. Requires them to communicate. What were we saying?
Open up more.
Open up more, and is there another?
Solicit information.
Okay, absolutely. I mean, so to gather all that information. The other thing that it does, that's probably really you don't think about, but is just there, is it's putting the ownership of the dispute back on them. I mean, it is their problem, so you're asking them these questions to gather all the information, open up, do a whole bunch of different things. But at the heart of it, you're making them do the thinking. It's their dispute. They have to figure this out, not you. And for some of you, it will be, I don't know who, we won't know till tomorrow, but I know from experience that some of you will have a hard time not telling the party certain things. And you'll be ready to say stuff to them as opposed to ask them a question. And what you'll want to do most of the times, and your trainer will tell you if you fall into that pattern, is just to pause and reframe it into a question. As long as it's not a leading question that's telling them what you want to tell them, which can be done as well. So instead of, and Andy will talk about reality testing more, but instead of saying, you know, if you don't settle it here today, you're going to end up having to pay a lawyer, go to court. It's probably going to cost you, you know, $10,000. That's not what you'd want to do as a mediator, from our perspective. What you're going to want to do is ask them the questions.
Are you aware of where this is going to go if it's not settled?
Yeah, what happens if you don't settle it? Are you going to need to hire a lawyer? You know, how much is this going to cost you? It keeps it on them. But what you're doing is making them think it through. And Andy will talk, that's really reality testing examples, and Andy will work with you later on that. But I just want to make the point that you're going to be asking a lot of questions. You're also going to want to use your active communication skills in between all the time. But that's one of the reasons that questions are so important. The other part of questioning that we've talked about a little bit is timing. In fact, Dick, this was your question that I put off before lunch. Your question was, during the party's initial statements, are you going to want to ask questions, or how much questions are you going to want to ask? The minute the first person opens their mouth, I think you're going to have questions popping into your head as the mediator. They're going to start telling you things, and you're going to, oh, well, I wonder about this or that. And the question then arises for you, do I ask it now during the initial statement phase? Do I ask it during the joint session or crosstalk when they're talking together? Or is it so sensitive that it's something I need to reserve for a caucus or the private meeting? So that's your question you have. What I would say during the initial statements, and this may end up being repeated to you later on today, but during the initial statements, there's not very much you need to ask. You do not need to know very much at that point in time. All you're going to need to know from both of the parties when they're done with their initial statements is enough so you can identify the topics that they're going to need to talk about later on, which is the identifying issue stage. So it's not a fact-finding situation. And for people who are used to investigating, which I heard some of you are, that may or may not be a difficult little change for you. So you just want them to get their story out, tell you some things, restate it. Now, all that being said, a few clarifying questions are fine. So there's no harm in asking some questions. You know, I might, in a landlord-tenant case, through talking about security deposits or rent, I might ask them, you know, so how much was the security deposit, or what was your monthly rent? And I may not. You know, so you can do a few questions. The thing to remember is you're going to listen to this first person, and you may have questions to ask. But guess what? You get to hear this other person, and your questions may be answered, and you don't even have to do that work. Or you've listened to both parties, you have just enough information to identify the topics for them, and they start talking in crosstalk. Guess what? All those your questions are answered because they start talking about it. So again, as less work that you need to do, the better. Which also now gets back to open-ended questions versus closed. We've had some conversations on that already. Open question being a question that allows someone to to answer as much as they want, versus a closed question, which will usually be a one-word answer, yes, no, or in Cincinnati or whatever your question may be. In a mediation, you will want to ask a lot of open questions, particularly early on in the mediation. Sometimes mediators think about it as a funnel approach, so as far as open versus closed questions. So at the beginning of a mediation, all this area on the funnel would be open questions. And as you progress and you get through caucus, then you might narrow your questions and ask more closed questions as are appropriate for the situation. For some people who are so used to asking closed questions, just changing from closed to open questions makes a dramatic effect in how they mediate. Just this, and it's a technique, it's not even doing anything else, but just switching to the open questions. One open question can save you 20, 30, or 40 closed questions a lot of times. Okay? I mean, an example of that, again, would be one that comes to mind is a landlord-tenant situation. They're talking about a security deposit, the tenant's moved out, and the landlord's talking about all the repairs he has to make, and that's why he's not giving back the security deposit. I could ask that landlord, okay, do you clean the carpet when a tenant moves out? Yes, I do. Do you paint the walls? Yes, I do. Do you change the locks? Yes. And I could go on with a whole bunch of closed questions. Or I could simply ask, when a tenant moves out, what is your procedures? And he could tell me all this. And the chances are I'm going to get more and better information by just letting him talk about it. And I can always fill in with the questions that I might think are needed later on. Okay? So a lot of open questions in the mediation. And you can also use the open-closed questions to shape how a party's talking. So for example, in an initial statement, we do have some parties who just start talking a lot. And there are some time constraints in our work. And half an hour has gone by and they're only when they're age 4. And the event that happens at age 45 or something. So you would cut it off before that. But what you may need to do then, they're going on and on and on. One, you're not going to be able to even remember it all, to summarize it. And it just seems to be way off point. So you would interrupt them, actually, and summarize. You'd probably start by, excuse me, I want to make sure I fully understand what you're saying. You're saying that this, and this happened. So you would do the restating so they feel heard. And then you might follow up with a more closed question. Could you tell me exactly what brought you here today, or the last thing that happened that brought you here today? So you can use the closed question to direct them in a certain way if necessary. The reverse is true as well. Someone's initial statement is one sentence. I want my $100 he owes me. You probably want a little bit more information. You may not need too much more, but so you may want to ask that person a very open question. Could you tell me more about this $100 loan? Or some open question to try to get them talking. So you can use different questioning techniques to do that. What I think I'd like to do is to pair you up to do a short exercise on questioning, because as I said before, it is the closed open way of asking questions is so important. And from experience, some of you will be very comfortable asking open questions, but not as comfortable with closed, and vice versa. So what I'd like to do is pair you up, and the way I'm actually going to pair you up this time is the two of you together and just go around the room that way, which will leave you free. And Patricia Deer, who's one of our experienced trainers who, when you're going to be coming, Patricia will work with you. You're helping, she'll be here tomorrow to help you in your practice sessions tomorrow. So you work with Mike. One of you is going to just make an emphatic statement. So you're going to have to decide who's going to make the statement. The other person gets to ask questions, but you only get to ask closed questions. So you're going to only be able to only ask questions that are going to that the person's going to respond in 1 or 2 words, and then you'll follow up with something else. The person who makes that statement, it could be like Mayor Daley's the best mayor in the world, or the worst, whatever you want, just some strong statement you can think of. You don't even have to believe it. Then the person's going to ask you questions, and then you're going to have to just make up some answers to those questions. But the point of this exercise is for the questioner to just ask those closed questions. Okay? Any questions on how to do this? It's just we'll just do this for a couple minutes. Okay, so pair up. One of you be the stater and make an emphatic statement. The other person just ask closed questions.
They never watched that.
Okay.
Okay. We'll give you the choice this time.
Oh, without a doubt.
What I'd like you to do is just switch the stater and the questioner. So whoever was making the statements now are going to ask only open questions, and the other person is going to make the emphatic statement. So the questioner now,
Open question.
Not close.
only open, no closed questions per minute, only open questions. Okay? And you can make a different statement or the same statement, whatever you want to do as the stater. Okay, go ahead.
Same thing.
No, switch.
You can't be.
You're switching.
The reason we're losing a lot of true business is because of union conflict
And you have kids that are also in certain
I don't know, a lot of you
Okay, let's take a break here. Not a break from your seats, but to discuss this little exercise. For those of you who were asking the questions, what was it like for you? And let us know if you were asking the closed questions or open. Maybe we should actually start with the closed questions first. For those of you who are asking the closed questions, how did that feel for you?
Hard.
Wait, so it was hard for you? Okay, what made it difficult?
Because I had to keep thinking of new questions because they were so short.
Okay. Okay, so that was how you felt. Anybody have some different feelings about
I
it?
kept thinking about open-ended questions I wanted to ask.
Okay. Anyone find it easy?
Well, I found it hard to get even in the right ballpark.
Okay.
You didn't even know what the animal you were dealing with.
I can't hear you.
I didn't know what the context was. And so through closed questions, we're talking about the garage, or we're talking about, you don't even know where you are.
Okay, which would be different, obviously, if you had a sense of what the problem was and what people were talking about. It might have been easier than asking closed questions.
What I found was when the statement was something that I was interested in, then I really wanted to get more information than asking a question that I knew was just going to give me a one-word answer.
Okay. So you wanted more of that information. What about the people who were answering the questions that were closed questions? How did you feel at being asked all these closed questions?
It felt very choppy to me.
I thought I had control. So very
You had control as the...
as the answer, because I'm giving you one. It's all natural.
Yes, no, maybe. Okay, good. What about with the open questions? The people, anybody that was asking open questions find that challenging?
Yeah, more
Yes.
difficult.
Were you asking the open questions?
Yes.
You would be someone who I would think it might be more difficult based on your, and I'm only saying that based on being on the bench.
If you're
actually.
tying things, you're always tying things down. It's
Right.
difficult to leave things open.
Right. So, I mean, and what you will find, other people find it difficult?
It was hard to find the issue, it was hard to narrow things down. You know, you could float from one hard subject to another, and, where are we going to end up here?
Right, so at some point, I mean, that's where the funnel approach comes in. I mean, at some point, you will want to help parties focus, for sure, in a mediation. Is there someone else that was
Well, I
asking?
liked it because it was drawing my interest where he was going with it. It kept giving me more information. So I felt I was getting closer to where he was going
Okay.
by asking the open ones.
Okay, and the people who were answering the open questions, well, how did that feel for you?
Made you think.
Okay, so you had to give some answer to it.
I started feeling like I was kind of going off on a tangent that really was irrelevant at some points, maybe.
And you could be. I mean, and the open question is allowing you to do that, to go wherever you want. And in the course of a mediation, you may ask an open question, then you may restate and summarize. I mean, there may be a whole bunch of other things that go on before you ask your next question. So that will be part of it.
But
Yes.
having in mind what I was complaining about, the open-ended questions gave me a chance to get to the problem that I was complaining about.
Good, right. Because you were getting enough information out, and then
I
you
was-
could get to it.
I was giving
Right.
a lot of the details that she wanted to know.
Okay. I think this group is a good example of how some of you in this group are definitely more comfortable with closed questions and some more comfortable with open, and which means you'll just need to be working on the opposite. But again, the people who it's more natural to ask the open questions, I think you'll have an advantage in the early stages of the mediation. And then people who are more comfortable with the closed questions, when it comes to really tough reality testing questions, especially in caucus, that will be probably an area where you'll feel most comfortable with. Most of what we're doing again today, this is just to get on the same wavelength and same page. The real training in this course does not take place until tomorrow and on Saturday. It's doing the practice and getting the feedback from the trainers. There is one, are there any questions on questions? I want to make just one other point about questions. if you can, most of the time you probably want to avoid asking a why question and just rephrase that to a what or how question. The why question is generally asking someone to defend themselves or to give an explanation, and so you may lose a little bit of rapport. They may feel a little bit on the defensive. Almost every why question, if you take a moment, you can restate it into a what or how question. The why question itself, it's a good question. So don't get me wrong with that. In fact, the why question goes to the heart of a lot of what we do as a mediator in trying to get to needs and interests, which we'll talk about later today. But instead of asking, why do you want this, you could ask, what do you hope to achieve? I mean, they can just be restated in certain ways. Okay, before we take a break, there's one last exercise and topic I want to cover with you, and that would be reframing. Okay? Reframing is similar to neutralizing language, but it's going much farther. It's taking a negative statement and restating it in a very positive way. It's trying to change the perspective of a person that's making probably a negative statement. If you didn't get this in the materials, I have a definition, if it's helpful, and I'll say it to you as well. Reframing is a restatement which changes the frame. You could use the word context, in which a person perceives an event or understands a statement to change the meaning. The cliche example is someone says the glass is half empty. Okay, so you're saying that the glass is half full. That would be the cliche. It's in mediations, many times, people get into a very negative state. I'll read this one more time. Reframing is a restatement which changes the frame in which a person perceives an event or understands a statement to change the meaning. On page 3-8, you have the bottom half of the page is on reframing. The bullet points are also some examples. You might change a complaint to a request. Okay, someone's complaining. That's a very negative thing. But as a mediator, you may reframe that as a request. Restating a position into an interest. Defining individual goals as joint ones. Changing the focus from the past to the future. So the parties may be dwelling in the past and you refocus them into the future. Negative into a positive. And what a reframe can do many, many times is inject a whole new energy level into the mediation. So sometimes the mediation just kind of stalls. It seems like they're at impasse. By helping them in some way to reframe what they're talking about, brings new energy into the mediation. And the example in the book is someone says he's a liar, he always lies, you cannot believe a word the man says. The mediator could restate, so then you need to be very cautious around listening to the information you hear and making sure you have all the facts straight. It's just restating something, but giving a whole different spin on it so the person's not stuck in the negativity. That was in the little paragraph under reframing. If you turn 2 more pages, there's a little exercise on reframing. Reframing is actually trickier than neutralizing language. So I want you to do the similar type of thing. Probably just the first 3 we'll work with. So take a moment and restate it, but try to really shift it to a positive statement. So another very exaggerated example would be someone says, I'm really afraid of him. You could say, so knowing you're afraid, you can make sure you take appropriate measures to protect yourself. Okay? That's taking it really far, but that's the reason I'm doing that is just to give you an example of what going really far with it would do. You don't have to go that far, but that's an example. good question. Go ahead.
Can reframing be in the form of a question?
It actually could, as we just defined it, it's a restatement, and we're really talking about restating it and not in a question form for right now, because that would be the main way you're doing it. But you can actually change someone's perspective through a question. But for here, I really wanted it to be a restatement. Again, I realize some of you haven't finished. I just really want to cover the first couple ones just to make sure you have an understanding of it. So let's do, this is stupid. We've tried talking about this before, and all we do is argue. Who has a reframe for that?
I find our discussions haven't been fruitful.
Wait, you know, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I find our discussions haven't been fruitful.
Okay. And actually, you're also doing it as if you're talking with the person, which you can reframe as well. I don't, it's making it less, I think you've neutralized it, but I don't think it's gone quite far enough to switch into the positive. Judith, did you have one?
Yeah, let me ask you. First I said you're concerned that the communication has not been successful in the past, and then I said you're concerned about improving communication so that it has more chance of success. Now, is that second one gone too far? Or?
No, the second one is reframing.
Really the better.
The first one was neutralizing, the second, so great example.
Say that second one again, what you said?
You're concerned about improving communication so that it has more chance of success.
I mean, she was taking, it was same topic, restating it, but took the person's feeling very negative about it and switching it to just a positive outlook on it, is all it was doing. Yeah, Peter.
I said you have each made the effort to talk this through.
Okay. I think, and that's, and what I would do, I think that's a real good setup, and what I would do is try to put one more spin on it, and it's close to my example. So you've been trying to resolve this, which is kind of similar to what you were saying, and today is an opportunity to take care of this once and for all. And it's taking it, okay, but today is the opportunity. You can finally get this taken care of. And another example I had is it's important to you not to waste time arguing, which is still trying to shift it from just being negative to, okay, you don't want to do this, and then you could follow up on how they'd like to proceed.
Can you say you would like to be able to discuss this without making judgments, or is that putting too many words in your mouth?
Well, I don't think it's putting too many words in their mouth. That might be something you might want to test with them. I don't think it's, and so it would be a good thing to do in a given situation. I don't think it's quite a reframe. It's shifting their perspective. Mike?
I said, since you've tried before, there seems to be a real interest in resolving this matter.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Now, the only trick there is that one gets tricky because the parties may not feel that, and they may feel, no, I feel like walking out. And so, you know, it's a little bit of a judgment call whether you've quite reframed it. I think, so it may work. I think the way Peter was going and then shifting it to something, and what Judith had was just a little bit better. Connie, could you have one? Or?
Oh, okay. Since this seems useless to you, it's wordy. You question the value of going on, even though you hope that you can get beyond it.
Okay. I think, again, you made it much more neutral and you stated it accurately, and I think it's just, for a reframe, it's just missing that more positive spin. So you would, instead of that very tail end, you would say, and maybe today, you know, you might be able to get beyond it.
Okay.
Just helping them see that, you know, maybe there is a way out of this. Okay. Let's do number 2. I don't know why I'm bothering. She's the most stubborn woman I've ever met. She won't listen to a thing I say.
She's strong with what she believes, and it seems important for you to be heard.
Okay. I mean, I think that's shifting. Yeah, I think that shifted it positive. There might be ways to even go further, but I think that did it. That was nice. Maria?
You'd like to be sure that you understand each other. Perhaps each of you could restate each other's position.
Okay. You know, you're kind of combining some things, which I think can be really useful and beneficial. So, I mean, you did the restatement of it, and in a more positive way, and then you gave a suggestion of how they might be able to deal with that in the mediation. So I think that was fine. It's good. Did someone else? You have something you wanted to share?
Well, I said, even though you haven't felt heard in the past, you're really hoping to be understood today.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. And then, you know, hopefully, you know, giving them somewhere that they're going to be able to go with that, which is what Maria was doing with the technique, or something else you'll follow up with. I have a couple examples, some that may work and some that may not.